Okay, welcome to Finding Healthy Love as a Single Childless Woman. And it's wonderful to see so many of you here. And I know many of you are also will be watching the recording. So welcome also. We've been saying hello in the chat, sharing where we are Zooming from, and also sharing how you came across my work. It's always nice to know how you came across my work. Let me just admit another person. Yeah, I'm just going to take a breath. I'm a highly anxious person in recovery from being highly anxious. So it's important for me so that I can deliver a really good workshop for you to take a breath. And I invite you all to do the same. I imagine you might be coming from a busy day, or you might be in the middle of a busy day. And I invite you all to take a breath. And when I breathe in and then I breathe out, and when I allow my out breath to be longer than my in breath, I send a signal to my nervous system that I am safe. And this is, for me, a really important skill, important for life. I wish I knew it when I was dating. Don't think I did. It's important for difficult conversations. It's important for work. So I'm just going to breathe in. And breathe out. And tell myself that I'm safe. And you're welcome to do the same. So I am going to just tell you a little bit about the housekeeping for today's workshop. We will run until 8 p.m. Sometimes I do run a little bit over. I've always got so much to say. I will try and finish at 8. If there's any questions remaining, I can stay on for a little bit. Just checking the chat. Only I will be recorded. So unless you unmute to speak yourself, you won't be recorded. So you can keep your cameras on, or you can keep them off as you wish. I will be inviting you to share in the chat, and I will read out comments, and I'll do that anonymously. So I won't share your name, just the comment. And that's so that people watching on recording can find out what people are sharing about, and they can also feel part of the community and feel less alone. I will have questions towards the end. Many of you also filled in my questionnaire, and I'm really grateful to you for doing that. And it was really helpful and enlightening, and I hope to get to many of your questions. My aim is to create a safe, confidential, anonymous space. Anonymous as in what we say here, what we discuss here, what we share here stays here. You might, if you want to preserve your anonymity even more, you might want to change your name on your Zoom just to your first name, but that's entirely up to you. You won't be recorded unless you speak and unmute. And everyone is welcome here. This is a free workshop. It is inclusive. So it is for women who identify as childless, not by choice. And that might be women who are definitively childless. It might be women who are on the cusp. It might be women who are considering other options. It might be women who are a bit younger. So take care of yourself. I want to create a safe space. I want to make sure that people aren't triggered, but you're responsible for your own self-care. But everyone is welcome here. So my intention with today is to create connection and community. As I said, I had 140 women sign up to this workshop, and 49 of you are here. And we will be using the chat, and that helps to create connection and community. Psychoeducation, as we say in the trade, which is hopefully bringing you some insights. Some of you will know them already, some of you may not. but bringing you some insights that will help you on your journey. Some guidance, sharing my own experience and what has worked for me and for others who might have worked with me. Hope, because I know from your comments, some of your comments in the survey, that some people don't have a huge amount of hope right now, and I'd love to share a way forward. If you have any questions as we go along, please do pop them at the chat, in the chat. Every now and then I'll take a look, but I'll try and keep my flow. Okay, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. I am, and who I am now, I am a trauma-informed transformational coach. What does trauma-informed mean? It means that I know a fair amount about trauma, complex PTSD, childhood trauma, developmental trauma, lots of names for similar things. I am on my own journey of recovery from childhood trauma, developmental trauma, complex PTSD. I have done a lot of work on that with my own therapist, and I bring that into my work. Transformational coach, because I support people to transform their relationships with themselves, with their lives, often with their careers, and their romantic relationships. I'm a midlife mentor. Many of the women I work with are in midlife, which is a broad term stretching over many years. I'm the author of How to Fall in Love, a 10-step journey to the heart. I'm a well-being and mental health speaker for corporates and charities. I am married to Bill as of 4 years ago. I was 48 when I married. I am 52 now, considering going grey. I don't have children, and I do have a Cocker Spaniel. And just to add, I have been on my own personal development, healing, recovery journey for 20 years. I have been in recovery from numerous dysfunctional coping mechanisms, addictions, including an eating disorder, codependency, issues I developed having grown up around alcoholism. So I've been on my healing journey for 20 years. I've studied counseling and psychotherapy and coaching. Let me just admit. Cocker Spaniels are the best. They are, although it's been a challenge. I might talk about that in a little bit. Oops, sorry. Who I was pre-transformation. So I used to be an international news journalist for Bloomberg and Reuters. I worked in Parliament in the UK. I lived and worked in Mexico and Brazil. I used to cover wars, terrorist attacks, breaking news, earthquakes, tsunamis. I smiled all the time, as you can see from those pictures, the two of those pictures. At the same time, while doing that job, I was binge eating, I was binge drinking. Sorry, pressed admit and pressed the wrong button. I was a compulsive worker. I was a people pleaser. I had poor boundaries with others. I burnt out. I broke down. I got depressed. I was involuntarily single. So I want to be clear that there is nothing wrong with being single. I really enjoyed many of my single years. They were years of huge adventure and travel and healing in many ways, you know, a lot of personal development. But by the time I reached my 40s, I was involuntarily single. I didn't want to be single anymore, and I didn't understand why I was single. And I would call myself a dysfunctional dater. And as I have said previously, and sorry, one of the ladies, one of my coaching clients said she really appreciated it when I said this on one of my early workshops. So when I say dysfunctional dater, I dated alcoholics, drug addicts, workaholics, emotionally unavailable men. I dated married men, men who were attached to other women. I dated gay men. And I'll explain why in a little while. But I did lots of dysfunctional dating. I caused myself and others a lot of pain and heartache. And at that point, I wasn't happily single. I was confused. I was bemused. I felt like a hopeless case. I didn't understand why everyone else was pairing off and getting married. Sorry, gotta admit to someone else. I was also childless, with a craving when I got to my late 30s, around 40, a craving for family, but a lack of awareness about what that really meant, what that was really about for me. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But, childless through complex circumstances, which I will also talk about. So just a little word about these phrases. Childless, some of you commented in the survey, can we not do better than this word? Childless. It implies that we are less. And what I am really trying to support you with today is not to feel less. So, we want to get to a place where we feel enough, where we feel like we're not missing anything. But childless seems to be the easiest word, sort of shorthand. I know some people use the term NOMO, not non-mother. I don't really use that myself. I prefer to say I'm a woman without children. And if you ask me why, I will say, how long have you got? Because the circumstances are incredibly complex. But, my goal is that we would feel, as accepting of ourselves as possible and like there is nothing missing. And I know that's kind of it. For some of us who might be grieving, that might be an impossible dream. But I just want to note that the word childless isn't ideal. Single, as I said, we can be happily single. We can be joyfully single. There is nothing wrong with being single. We are not defective or faulty if we are single. We can enjoy our single years. For me, I was, as I said, reluctantly single, involuntarily single, and confused and bemused, and wanting to know why I was single. I just want to talk about so one of the women I work with recently who did my How to Fall in Love Laying the Foundations course program, she said, I thought I was here to find a partner and instead I found myself. So I want to mention that because when I was sharing about this workshop on social media, there was some criticism about me perhaps implying that being childless and single was something to be ashamed of, or that we are faulty. And I want to reassure people that my work is all about finding ourselves, knowing ourselves, believing in ourselves, loving ourselves, accepting ourselves, becoming at peace, finding our peace with being single and childless. And then if we do want a relationship, to be able to date consciously, mindfully, and with support so that we can have different outcomes. And, some of you in the survey said, you don't want me to say that the end goal for everyone has to be a relationship. And I don't believe that the end goal for everyone has to be a relationship. I do believe that we can be happily childless and happily single if we can get to that place. But I also believe that if you want a relationship, there is a way forward. There is a way forward. And that's what I believe. That's why I do the work that I do. That's why I'm here. So how on earth did I end up here? This is a question that I asked on my 41st birthday, in tears on my bed in my flat in London, single, childless. My career had imploded. I'd gone from working in Parliament, knocking on the door of Downing Street, to crying on my bed, depressed, burnt out. I'd left that job, and I didn't know what to do next. I was finding my way. How on earth did I end up here? This wasn't my plan. And I know when I share that, many people can relate to that sentiment. This wasn't how I planned my life. On the surface, the circumstances, this is how I ended up here. On the surface, I ended up here because I was a career woman, which I know is a term none of us like because nobody talks about career men. But I was a woman with a big career. And I am, the truth is my career came first. And I don't deny that. In my 30s, late 20s, I was living in Mexico. I was dating a man, long term, 4 years. He later decided to become gay. So he's the gay man that I dated and loved. And I had the option of moving to Brazil with Reuters. And I said, I'm going. You can come with me if you want, but I'm going. So my career did come first. And there are reasons for that, which I'll talk about in a moment. But that was my truth. I was ambitious. I was driven. I was busy. I didn't have much time to date. All the men I met were emotionally unavailable, partnered, attached. And I know you can relate to that. All the good ones were taken. That was my theory. And some of you shared that in the questionnaire as well. But I work in layers. My work that I do with people and where I want to get to on this workshop and the work I've done on myself runs in layers. So we have the top layer and then we have the next layer. So for me, beneath the smile, beneath the achievement, beneath the status, I was binge eating, and this was out of trying to control. I learned that in my childhood, to try and control things that weren't controllable when everything else was out of control. The binge eating helped me because I wanted it to. It helped me to disconnect from myself. Because I wasn't feeling my feelings. I was binge eating on my feelings. I was avoiding my feelings. I was completely disconnected from myself. This was also a defense against intimacy, as was the excess weight that I carried for some years. That was a bit basic, like, don't come near me. I don't want you to come near me. I don't want you to touch me. I don't love myself. I hate myself. And that might sound quite extreme, but that was my truth. Deep down, beneath the surface layer, I was binge drinking. Again, that numbed my feelings, disconnected me from myself, gave me a confidence boost, a sense of belonging. It was part of my defense. It was part of my shield. It was part of my mask. It was a persona. And as you will know, because you will have heard it many times from me, if you know me, or from other coaches, it is impossible to have a healthy relationship with anyone else if we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves. And this is what I'm describing. I didn't have a healthy relationship with myself. I am disconnected from myself. I am disconnected from my feelings. I am numbing my feelings. I am pretending to be someone I'm not. My high achievement, great job, wonderful career, loved a lot of it, lots of adventure and travel. But deep down, it came from being a compulsive worker, a people pleaser with poor boundaries, a work addict. I was really good at my career. I wasn't very good at relationships. So I gave my all to my career and I avoided relationships. I avoided dating, and I avoided exploring the reasons why I was single. I was fiercely independent and self-sufficient. And my favorite song was Simon and Garfunkel, I'm a Rock, I'm an Island. Don't come near me. Don't try and get intimate with me. Don't offer me commitment because, well, I'll come to that in a minute, but because I'm scared, because I'm scared. Because I have had some painful experiences in my childhood that have left me wounded, frightened of relationships. So I build a fortress around myself and I don't let anyone in. And I know this is all about me, but I describe this because I know some of you can relate, and because it is important for our journey to understand where we might have a faulty connection with ourselves. So if you can relate, please do share in the chat. I will come up with some specific questions for you in a moment. Yeah, thank you. Some of you can relate. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome to share as I go along, because as I'm speaking, you're welcome to share in the chat. You support each other in this way, you inspire each other, and you connect with each other, and you feel less alone. You also break the shame and isolation that comes with self-harming, dysfunctional, unhealthy behaviors. So please do keep sharing. So that was, thank you for relating. And I know someone has to leave, so thank you for being here. You know, that was the next layer. And I had to come to terms with all of those behaviors. As I say, I've been in recovery from addictive behaviors for 20 years. It's been a journey of many layers. And my childlessness is part of that story. Okay, I'm pleased that people feel less alone. Deeper layer. Now, this layer is a layer that I have been really uncovering in recent years. And it is a layer that informs my work now with others, informs my coaching work, informs my courses, and has been hugely important for my own healing and development. Sorry, just to check. Yeah, you can relate to what I'm sharing. So deeper layer. Now, not everyone will be familiar with these terms. If you're not, please don't worry. Come and ask me about them. Email me. But childhood trauma, developmental trauma, trauma takes many, many forms. It can be as subtle as feeling like our needs aren't being met, or our needs not being met, being neglected, not being seen, not being heard. As a sensitive child, you know, I was hugely sensitive to what was going on around me: alcoholism, divorce, dysfunctional behaviors between my parents, not feeling welcome, not feeling safe, all those things. This for me is my childhood trauma. This is complex post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD. I spelt that right. I was always in, or I am always in flight or fight or freeze or fawn. The flight is the busyness, busy, 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 work, 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 run, 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 adrenaline, 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 detaches me from my feelings, keeps me, and that was very important for me. That was one way in which I avoided relationships, by being in flight, you know, climbing the career ladder, super perfectionist, all those things, overthinking, obsessive thinking, all that stuff. Fight is multi-layered, but interesting when it comes to talking about relationships, because we often fight the other person. We pick holes, we judge, we think they're not good enough, and we fight ourselves. So binge eating is fighting ourselves. Binge drinking is fighting ourselves. Or it's also freezing. So I am numbing, I am freezing. Freezing is also part of the losing our voice, can't speak my truth. Yeah, I freeze. And I have clients who do this, and I have done it too. You know, I'm in a romantic relationship. There's something I need to say. There's a truth I need to speak, and I freeze. I go mute. I can't speak. I don't express my truth. And then we end up in inauthentic relationships because we're not being real. We're not being true. So I appreciate this is a big topic. I have other work and courses and programs that help with this. So this is obviously a whistle stop tour. Deeper layer also, and some of you, I know many of you will relate to this. And even if you don't relate, it might be there and you might not have uncovered it yet. So I was scared of commitment and scared of intimacy myself because of my childhood experiences. I had, my experience of love and relationship and intimacy as a child was pain, loss, abandonment, rejection, all of which I buried inside and piled the food on top. So that was my experience of relationship. So why on earth would I want to try that again? Why would I want to do that? And I didn't know that that's what I thought for most of my dating life. So I didn't make time to date, but I didn't realize I wasn't making time to date. I just complained that there was no one to date. And I kept falling for unavailable men because I subconsciously chose them, because if they were emotionally unavailable, they couldn't offer me intimacy or commitment, and therefore I would feel safe. So I'm just going to pause because this is really important. But just because it's come into my mind, I want to say that when I said this workshop is inclusive, I absolutely mean inclusive. So whatever your sexual orientation, you are welcome here. And I just want to say that sometimes my language, it's very time consuming to keep saying women, men, women, people, they, them, and to be efficient with time. And also because it's my primary experience, I often talk about women being attracted to men, but I do not do that with any intention to exclude anyone. So please, if you can interchange the pronouns and the words that are relevant to you as I speak. So I am just going to go back to that point because this was the crux of my relationship light bulb moment. I was scared of intimacy and commitment because of my childhood experience. And I didn't make time to date. And I kept choosing unavailable men subconsciously because they couldn't commit. So for many years, I thought, gosh, all these men out there are unavailable. All these men are attached or drunk or alcoholics, or they won't commit to me. They won't commit to me. And it was only when I looked inside and realized that I was afraid of commitment and that it was helpful for me to keep falling for these men who were unavailable, because it meant that I didn't have to commit. And it was a subconscious choice. I wonder if you can relate to that. I have just spotted a question. So fawn, in the fight, flight, freeze and fawn, fawn is the people pleaser. I bow down. I subordinate my needs to your needs. I don't stand up for myself. It's kind of similar to freeze, as someone says, deer in the headlights. But fawn is, I am not worthy, you are more worthy, I will do as you say. So your needs come first. Yeah. Thanks for answering that. Let me just take a drink of water because I get very excited and a little anxious. Deeper layer. Okay, someone can relate to subconsciously choosing unavailable men. What are the signs of this? That's a question. We look at our patterns and we see what our patterns are. And I do have a whole self-paced course on how to find an emotionally available partner, which I can point you to later, which has all the signs and all the steps to overcome this. But the signs are that we keep falling for people who are emotionally unavailable themselves to their own emotions. So they might be shut down, they might be drinking, they might be numbing, they might be taking drugs, they might be workaholics, they might be addicted to religion, they might live on a different continent. As I dated a man on a different continent. They might live far away. We might not be able to see them very much. They might not have time or space for us. And the key is, and obviously they might be partnered, they might be married, they might be still attached to an ex. So physically unavailable, emotionally unavailable, unavailable in lots of different ways. And for me, a sign that I am unavailable myself is, am I available to my own emotions? Am I available to my own feelings? Do I allow myself to feel my feelings, or do I run from them, numb them, hide them? And there's another point that has gone out of my head, but it will come back. Am I conscious of my fears? Am I conscious of what's going on inside? So, yeah, that's how I'd answer that. I didn't feel enough. So I'm going back to my deeper layers that informed my dating and relationship experience. I didn't feel enough. I didn't feel worthy or valuable. I had unhealthy boundaries, and I kept choosing men who didn't value me. Men who didn't value my time, who didn't respect my boundaries, who didn't treat me as valuable, didn't show up, were flaky, didn't bother to fix a date, time and date for our next meeting. Men maybe who put me down. Being around people who, I felt edgy and unsure of myself around them. And then my story around motherhood, multi-layered, as I'm sure many stories are around childlessness. But, as I said, in around late 30s, I was like, biological clock, definitely need a child, trying to find a man. How can I find a man? So of course my standards dropped. I just need to find a man to have a child with. I rushed everything. I pressured everything. I was desperate for an outcome. I also explored at the time as a journalist at the time, but also for my own use and knowledge. I explored freezing my eggs. I didn't freeze my eggs, but I explored it. I wrote an article about it. I explored doing solo IVF. I had a fertility MOT at the London Women's Clinic. I had a chat with a counsellor about doing IVF on my own. Just admit someone else. I decided against that. My mum had brought me up and my brother up on our own with very little support from dad and very little money. I didn't want to do it on my own. And at a really deep level, it was only in my 40s that I discovered my ambivalence about motherhood, because of the childhood dysfunction in my life. Did I press record? I don't think I did I? Or did I? Does anyone know if I'm recording? I am recording. Thank goodness for that. I can't tell you the number of times I've got into a workshop and forgot to press record. I share about ambivalence because I feel like not many people do. I feel like it's important. I feel that there are women who aren't aware of their own ambivalence. And when I say ambivalence, I mean a bit like we are in romantic relationships where we might push and pull. So I pull, I want you, I want you, I want you. And then you come close, and now I'm terrified, and I don't want you, I don't want you, I don't want you, and I push you away. And I had the same with motherhood, really. I want it, I want it. I'm terrified of it. I'm terrified of being trapped, of being suffocated, like I saw my mother was. I'm terrified of not feeling free, not having my career. I'm terrified of not being able to attach to my child because I had attachment issues from my childhood. So I want it and I don't want it at the same time. And that's so confusing, so confusing. And I still have that today. I'm 52. I would say I'm definitively childless. I never really tried. I didn't try and force getting pregnant. I fell in love with a man who said he didn't want children, which, as my very wise therapist says, was clever on the behalf on by my subconscious. It was a clever thing to do because I could hold the yes, I want kids, and he can hold the no, he doesn't want kids. And the result is kind of ambivalence. And we were probably both ambivalent, even though he wouldn't admit to it. But, I appreciate in this Zoom room, we have women with very different stories. Some of you will have tried hard, experienced IVF, broken relationships because of IVF. Some of you might be, still thinking about motherhood and trying. So I do appreciate that we have very different stories. And I guess it comes down to understanding ourselves, finding a way to grieve, finding a way to accept ourselves and forgive ourselves. But the self-understanding is so important for me. So I just want to share these two phrases: psychologically single. So if somebody, this is what I would say now, if I was single today, and somebody asked me, why are you single? That question that people ask that's so infuriating. I would say I'm psychologically single because of my psyche, because of my childhood wounds, because of my childhood experiences. And I would say, and my therapist gave me this phrase just last week, because we all know about social infertility, as in I haven't found a man or a woman or a person in time to be with in time to have a child. But psychologically infertile is more accurate for me because of my psyche, because of my ambivalence, because of my childhood wounds. So okay, really big question. The issue I have is that I'm struggling to accept that I will never meet my child. How do you accept this? As in, you will never, if I'm clear on that, as in you will never have your child. You will never get to meet your child. That's what I understand. How do you accept this? I am gonna try and come on to that. Let me try and come on to that, and if I don't, pop it back in. Because I have got a little slide, an important slide that talks about that. But just while it's there, self-forgiveness for me is paramount, absolutely paramount, because I think many of us as women, we judge ourselves, we criticize ourselves, we give ourselves a really hard time, we berate ourselves, we think it's all our fault. So I don't know your story, but it is important to know your story. How did I end up here? And that's what I'm going to ask now. And I will come back to your question. How did you end up here? And I would love you, in summary, if you would like to pop in the chat your answer to that question. How did you end up here? There is a question about the purpose of this meeting. This is finding love as a single, childless woman. And the intention is community, connection, psychoeducation, guidance, support, insights, encouragement to help you to feel less alone. How did you end up here? Either. How did you, because for me, they are connected, and they might not be connected for you. Some of the reasons I have put here, dysfunctional childhood, complex PTSD, unhealthy parenting, lack of role models, career focused. There's nothing wrong with that. That is not a criticism. That's how we were brought up, many of us. Physical and mental health issues. I know there were many physical issues that were mentioned in the survey, so I want you to feel less alone with that. Socially infertile, as in I haven't had a relationship or met a person in time to have a child. Medically infertile, my body tried but didn't follow through, either naturally or through IVF. Relationally infertile is similar, but that could be that you perhaps married someone who didn't want children, or the relationship wasn't strong enough, or however you interpret that. Psychologically infertile would be a combination of all of the above, and that kind of describes me, ambivalent about motherhood. So the reason I ask you to share in the chat is because you identify with each other, you feel less alone. I hope that's my intention, and that's certainly been my experience when I've run many of these workshops before. Oops, sorry. So I'm just going to have a quick glance. Not having a plan. Traumatic childhood, dysfunctional childhood, unhealthy parenting, medically infertile, ambivalent, sexual abuse, bad relationships, never been in a proper relationship. I worry I'm not capable of it. I hope this will give you some encouragement. It's, I can't, there's only so much I can do on this workshop, but I believe that if we really do the inner work, we can have a relationship. Relationally infertile was just something that came to me while I was writing that slide, and perhaps from some of the answers in the questionnaire, some people had maybe been in a relationship with someone who couldn't give them children or didn't want to give them children. So it's however you interpret it, really. But infertility that arose out of being in a relationship. Cheating husband, sabotaged attempts to have children, eventually caused infertility and STI. So I'm not going to read everything out just because of time, but I hope you I hope you feel less alone. I hope you feel that you are not alone with your struggles. I hope you feel that people understand and empathize with you. So yeah, mental health difficulties, relationships that didn't work out, poor choices, childhood trauma, lost my mum at 6. Gosh, yeah, that's going to be really difficult. Complex PTSD. So keep sharing and keep supporting each other. And I'm going to move on because I've got so much to share, and I'm going to try not to run over time. Actually, just before I move to that slide, trigger warning. There is a photo of a really happy family coming up. And I will talk about that photo, but just letting you know, you might have already seen it, but it's coming up. So I want to talk about childless grief. So childless grief, it comes from the longing for a family today. So what does this image represent to you? And, I could look at that image and I could cry. It represents joy and connection and my little family, love, smugness. Thank you for that. Belonging, what I don't have, unattainable. Yeah, longing for a family. What does this say to you? And my truth is I have spent a little bit less now, but I have spent a huge amount of my time looking around as I go through the day, go through my world, staring at people who have this, literally staring at them, thinking, how on earth did they get that? And feeling jealous of it and envious of it. So I have spent a lot of time doing that. And the reason I share this picture is not to trigger you. It is to identify what it means to us, because I think it's important to identify what that represents to us. And now I want to share this idea. So we have our childless grief because we are longing for a family today. And then we have our childhood grief, longing for the family that we didn't have, the childhood that we didn't have. Now, I wrote a long blog about this, which you may have seen, but this won't be relevant to everyone, but it might be relevant to some of you, and it might be helpful for some of you. So what I have realized over the years is when I spend all this time staring at these families and longing for this dad who plays with his kids, and this dad who's carrying his kids on his shoulders, and this mum who looks so beautiful and together and engrossed and loving and adoring, is partly I long for that. And partly, hugely, that is my longing for the family that I didn't have. That is my longing for the childhood that I didn't have. And this, I think, is for some of you, not all, and a question that is worth asking. Because when I started exploring this question, it helped to ease my grief. It helped to ease my pain, my childhood grief, childless grief. Recently, there has been a new pregnancy in my vicinity, in my close circles. Initially, it absolutely knocked me for 6 again. And then I started to ask myself, how much of this longing is a longing for what she has and is about to go through and is about to have: pregnancy, motherhood, child, and how much of it is my longing for a different childhood, a different early life experience. Yeah, as I say, and I see that the chat is filled with lots of other comments, and you are relating to each other, but some of you also relate to this. And I would like some of you, if it feels relevant, to consider this as a possibility, that you're longing for a child, for a family, for connection, for community, to belong, is also a longing for the family that you didn't have. And I think when we do that grief work around our early life, which I have done and I do with lots of my clients and on my courses and on my retreats, it helps to ease the childless grief. It also, if you are someone who is still in a position to have a child, it also, I think, gives you perspective on your reasons for having a child. Because I know for sure, having parented our 2.5-year-old Cocker Spaniel and found it incredibly difficult in terms of my freedom, my independence, this huge sense of responsibility, feeling quite trapped. And I know then that's just a dog. I know that if I had had a child, thinking that that child would resolve my childhood longing, my childhood grief, the longing for the family that I hadn't had when I was a child, then I would have ended up with serious postnatal depression, a huge sense of emptiness, the same sense of emptiness, but then with a child. So this won't be the same for all of you, but it might be the same for some of you. And I share that in case it's helpful. And yeah, we might not be ready to hear this, and that's okay. And it might not be for you. Someone says they find it hard to relate to this, they feel blank around it, and that's okay. And yeah, because you're in my community, the person who asked that question, you might hear this again and again, and we hear things when we're ready, and they relate, they sink in with us when we're ready, and that's how it is. So I'm going to move on, but coming to the question of how do we okay, someone shares the opposite, that I'm longing for the family life that I did experience in my childhood. So if you had really positive childhood experiences, lovely family life, then it will be hard to not repeat that. And I really, really understand that. So this slide is for primarily, I suppose, for women who might still have an opportunity to have a child. In the light of what I have shared just now in terms of childhood grief versus childless grief, it's about thinking about priorities. Actually, this is important for everyone. What are our priorities? Because of all the work I had done on myself and the ambivalence that I was coming to understand, I decided that my priority was to have a life partner. And I threw myself into that, and I gave it my all, and I invested in that. And that's also because at the time I was 42, 43. So depending on where you are, this question may or may not be relevant, but what's your priority? And some of you who still have the opportunity to have a child through adoption, IVF, egg donor, perhaps naturally, perhaps by finding a partner and having a child naturally. For those of you who still have that opportunity, it is, and might feel you might not have time, it is about thinking about priority. What is your priority? I realized that my priority was to have a life partner. Some women, I know women who realize that their priority is to have a child. I know women who are going through the adoption process on their own. I interviewed loads of women years ago in my early 40s who were doing making lots of different choices. And I know the majority of people on this workshop are definitively childless. But some people might want to think about priorities. Yeah. So I hear your priorities not to go through life alone, to find balance, to be happy, to feel safe and secure. So these are really good priorities. 46. I'm not sure what my priorities are now. Well, this is an invitation, not right now, but when we finish this workshop, in the next days, to think about your priorities. How do I know if I still have the chance? Yeah, I don't know how you know. I think we try to connect with our heart and our soul and our truth and try and choose a path that feels the right one for us. For me, it was having a life partner. That was the most important, because at the age I chose, I made that choice. I did have other options. I could have pursued other options. So I'm going to move on. If there are any questions that I haven't answered, you can ask them again at the end. So as I have people here who are definitively childless and some who might still have the opportunity, but the majority of you are single or in relationships you might not be sure about, or perhaps in a relationship you are sure about, but majority are single. There are two things we want to be aware of that sort of span all those segments: grief and panic. So when we feel our grief, when we're carrying grief, we can feel less than. Childless grief, I mean, we can feel less than, we can feel not enough, we can feel defective, we can feel desperate. And all this leads, if we're looking for love, this leads us to date with a craving. And as I've often said, dating with a craving is like going grocery shopping when you're starving. You will put anything in your basket, you will not be discerning. And that leads to pain. So if you are grieving and feel less than, and feel that you're not worthy, and feel that you're not valuable, and feel that you're not lovable, then the outcome of dating is not going to be a healthy one. It's not going to be a good one. Similarly, I keep checking the time because I've got so much to share and I already know I'm going to go over time. Similarly, if you are panicking about running out of time, about trying to figure out what to do, and if you are feeling that panic, then you're going to be dating with a craving, and that will lead to pain. It will lead to poor choices. It will lead to it will lead to bad dates. It will lead to poor relationships. So obviously we want to feel as whole as possible. We want to process our grief as much as possible. And we want to manage that sense of panic and urgency. Due to finish at 8, yeah. And I'll try and finish as much as I can by 8. So when we feel not enough, this is just a little image of when we feel not enough. And what I have to say, I received 60 surveys, which is fantastic, amazing that you took the time to do that. And there were lots of comments of not feeling enough, not feeling worthy, not feeling valuable, perhaps as a single woman, perhaps as a childless woman. And I know if I were to ask you the question, what do you think the outcome of dating when I'm feeling not enough is? I imagine you'd come up with a good answer to that. So if I date feeling not enough, what do you think the outcome is? Welcome to share on that in the chat. If I date feeling not enough, what is the outcome? Okay, just on this sense of not feeling enough, and please answer that question if you'd like to. Somebody's unmuted. Let me just, could you just make sure you're muted, please? Let me just mute all. Oops. This feeling of not feeling enough, and again, I share this to try and support you to manage this feeling of not feeling enough. What does this feeling remind you of? When in the past did you feel not enough? When in the past did you feel unworthy, not valuable or valued, incomplete, unlovable, like you didn't belong? And I share this because I learned in childhood to feel not enough, to feel unworthy, to feel that I wasn't valued, to feel incomplete, to feel unlovable, and to feel like I didn't belong. So if we carry that from our childhood, that will amplify how we're feeling in the present day. And it will be very difficult to feel enough unless we work through the childhood stuff. I hope that makes sense. You know, there's no point me saying you are enough, because you might not believe that, because you have deeper childhood wounds around not feeling enough, not feeling like we belong. And then the childless thing just gets landed on top of that, like a huge, huge amplifier, because of the society we live in, because so many people have children, because we live, you know, families everywhere, because of the messaging that is out there. So it is like a lightning rod, but we might have deeper feelings around not feeling enough, not feeling unworthy. And you might want to answer that question in the chat. Oh, you might have done already, because there are 17 new messages. Okay. So kind of there's quite a lot in the chat, and I might have lost my I don't know where you're up to with your answering the questions, but thank you. You're really helping each other by sharing. So carry on with that. But my point here is that if we felt like there was something wrong with us when we were young, we're going to feel like there's something wrong with us today. And then if we're childless, we're going to feel like there's something wrong with us even more, and single perhaps more. And we need to deal with the root. This is the work that I do. I deal with the root. We need to deal with the root, the core, the wounds that are deeper, because that's where the healing starts. And by doing that, and this in a way comes to the question that was asked around a little bit, comes to the question that was asked about, you know, not having a child. We have to try and heal these wounds as well, the early wounds around not feeling enough. So we do the inner work to heal our early life wounds. We feel enough, so that we feel enough and valuable and worthy and lovable and like I belong and complete more or less, because, we are imperfect human beings. I will always be on a healing journey. My wounds are part of me. I can heal them. I can carry some of them. I can manage some of them. Let me just have a look at the questions. Lovely, hopeful comment here. Sometimes having a good experience through dating can help overcome that feeling of not enough. I recently made a new friend through dating, and his friendship and acceptance is helping me feel more enough. Brilliant. So that's really hopeful comment. Thank you for sharing that. So we have to do the inner work to heal our early life wounds in order to have positive dating experiences, which I'm going to come on to. This hopefully speaks to the question that was asked about how do I come to terms with the fact that I'm never going to have a child, that I'm never going to meet that child. This is what helps me, and it only helps to a degree, but it helps. It wasn't and it isn't my fault because of the circumstances of my early life that led me to behave in a certain way in relationships, that led me to make certain choices in my life. It wasn't and it isn't my fault. And no matter the experiences or the circumstances of your situation, I hope you can see that deep down that it wasn't and it isn't your fault. So self-understanding for me is hugely important. Knowing my journey, understanding my story. How did I end up here? Oh, I ended up here because these things happened. And it's not about being a victim. It is about grieving the childhood that we didn't have, the past that we didn't have, the relationships that didn't turn out as we wanted them to, and then taking responsibility for the things that we can change. There are things we can't change. There are things that we cannot change. And then we grieve those, and then we take responsibility for the things that we can change. Self-forgiveness. This is something I work on a lot in my work with my clients. Self-compassion, self-acceptance. Yeah, someone says, thank you for clarifying that it's not about being a victim. Absolutely not about being a victim. It is about, for me, it's about the stages of the journey. I understand and accept what happened to me. I understand that that wasn't my fault. I understand that there were things that I couldn't change. I see how they have affected me, my circumstances, my childlessness, my relationships. I do my healing, I do my grieving, and then I change the things that I can. I take responsibility for the things that I can. That has been my journey. Okay, finding healthy love. How do we do that? Okay. How do you raise all this difficult stuff with a date without driving them away when they inevitably ask if you have children? I think what I'm going to share now might help with that. But in summary, we want to get to a place of self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, self-love. Trust is huge, and trust came up a lot in the questionnaire. So trusting that I am enough, and that if I show up authentically, I will be enough. It's also about deciding when you share, because I talk a lot about when we share too much at the beginning, we create a false intensity, which feels exciting and might feel passionate and amazing, but then like fizzles out or goes up in smoke, or we end up in bed with them and it all goes wrong. So I'm always mindful of suggesting that we don't overshare at the beginning. But if you can imagine that I am grounded, I am rooted, I know my story, I understand my story, I forgive myself, this is who I am, I show up authentically, and I trust that if I show up authentically, that I eventually will find someone who accepts me as I am. And maybe it won't be eventually. Maybe it will happen reasonably quickly. I think one of the issues I work with is women who don't show up authentically, who don't speak their truth, who don't express their needs and wants, who fawn, who freeze, and end up in inauthentic relationships that aren't based on truth, but that last because I'm not showing up authentically until they don't last, until they break down. Yeah. Okay. I'll come back to that though. Hopefully this will help. So, oh my gosh, time's going so quickly. Or as usual, I'm trying to fit too much in. Cart before horse. This phrase has come to me a lot lately. I tend to put the cart before the horse. As in, and what I mean by this when I talk about dating and relationships is that we go and date before we have healthy foundations of self-care, self-love, self-esteem, self-awareness, understanding our fears, understanding our patterns. And then we get burned because we have gone dating with unhealthy foundations, and then that hurts. And then we lose our self-esteem, we lose our sense of trust. We think, why bother? It's too painful, and we don't do it again. And then years pass and we haven't tried. We want to put the horse before the cart. What do I mean by that? Well, similarly to a house built on weak foundations. For me, my weak foundations were that I was disconnected from myself and my feelings. I had low self-esteem and self-worth. I was unaware of my relationship fears. I was unaware of how my fears created unhealthy patterns. And I was craving love, affection, connection, company. So I was dating with a craving, which means I go supermarket shopping when I'm starving, which means I will put anything in my basket, which means I will end up in a bad relationship, which means I get hurt, which means I don't want to try again. All men are whatever, not trying again, don't trust. So it's a vicious cycle. Weak foundations, poor boundaries, unresolved childhood pain, fear of intimacy and commitment, low self-esteem, craving love, dating without support. This leads me, follow the circle, to say yes when I mean no, to attract people who don't value me, to attract commitment phobes and unavailable people. This then leads me to get hurt or hurt others, to feel abandoned, rejected, to feel not enough, to feel faulty and defective. And then this amplifies my low self-esteem. My low self-esteem takes a hit. I lose hope. All men are, or women are, or people are XXX. Insert the swear word. I build up my defenses. I feel worse about myself, and I don't try again. So that's a vicious cycle, and that's what we don't want. So, some questions for you to ponder. I often use, as you'll know, if you've taken any of my courses or been on a retreat, I like my imagery. So here is a tree that is broken, undernourished, doesn't have deep roots, very thin branches, susceptible to being knocked over, will fall over in a heavy storm, not connected. So in what condition are you dating? Need a plan. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to try and move on. But thanks for that comment. I'm just going to mute everyone. So this is part of this is part of the plan. I would like you to ask yourself, in honesty, in what condition are you dating? In what condition are you dating? I would like you to explore laying your healthy foundations. So, are you connected to yourself? Do you have healthy self-esteem? Are you aware of your patterns and how the roots of your patterns, why you're drawn to unavailable people? Are you aware of your fears of commitment, of abandonment, or rejection, of rejection? Have you begun to change your patterns and face your fears? Can you set healthy boundaries and know your worth? And can you date and relate with support, not on your own? You know, and just to that point that was made, like the work I do, it's not, I don't give dating tips so much. I suggest that you look at your foundations. And if you have healthy foundations, I'm happy to give dating tips. I'm happy to give, you know, suggestions, and I'll hopefully come on to that, and we will go on a little bit over if anyone wants to stay. But for me, like, what is the point of going on a date if I don't feel enough, I don't feel valuable, I don't feel lovable, if I don't have healthy self-esteem? For me, there isn't a point. I'm just going to go backwards. I'm going to get hurt. When I say date with support, not on your own, I mean, are you part of a friendship group or a community, or are you working with a coach? So that, and I do this, I have communities, which I'll tell you about, and I have courses that I'll tell you about. So, for example, a woman in my membership community recently was dating and she wanted to finish it immediately. And I and others in the community could ask the question, is this your fear of commitment? Or is this really your intuition? Maybe give him a chance. Maybe give him a bit longer. So, and I did this myself. When I was dating, I had friends on board, I had a therapist on board, I had communities on board, coach on board, and I said, you know, I need you to hold me to account. So if I go on a date and I don't enjoy it, but I decide to give him a second chance, despite all these red flags, if I share that with someone, they can hold me to account and say, Katherine, you've just shared 5 red flags. I suggest you don't go on that date again. Or if I think, oh, I didn't fancy him on the first date, they might say, give him a go, give him another chance. Maybe you're judging, maybe you're jumping to conclusions. So that's what I mean by support, people to touch base with. This is my imagery of how I would love us to be when we're going out on a date. So well-nurtured, well-nourished, which comes from really healthy self-care, connected to others, not on our own, deeply rooted, flourishing in our lives as much as possible. What else? Just like a tree, well watered, well rooted, connected, flourishing, standing tall, standing steady, not subjected to, not going to fall over if somebody doesn't like you or says they, you know, they don't want to be with you. You're going to stand tall. And we want a virtuous circle. So this is where what we need to put into place: healthy foundations, strong boundaries, not walls. There's a difference. Awareness of our early wounds. Am I emotionally available? Healthy self-esteem. We need to know that the answer to that question. Am I emotionally available? We need healthy self-esteem. We need to feel enough. well supported. So this is a virtuous circle. So if we have all these things in place, we can then say no when we mean no. We attract people who value us. We attract emotionally available people because we are available. We date as an adult, not as a wounded child. We enjoy dating and we have positive dating experiences. Now, this isn't like, I'm not saying magic, tomorrow do this and you'll find someone, but you will have positive dating experiences. You will enjoy dating. You will use the dating experiences to grow in self-esteem and confidence. You know, once we have our healthy foundations, we have to take the show on the road. We have to try, and we have to practice saying yes, saying no, thank you, saying, I don't want to be with you anymore, saying, understanding that we are two adults going on a date and it's okay to walk away. Our self-esteem grows, we have hope, we enjoy our lives, we have space, and we have energy for our dreams. So this isn't just about finding a partner. This is about not being in pain, not being in emotional pain, not banging our head against a brick wall when it comes to dating. It is about flourishing in all areas of our life because we believe in ourselves and we feel that we are enough. Is it possible to enjoy dating? I would say absolutely yes, if we have healthy foundations. And someone shared before some really lovely hope around dating, that they came away with a really beautiful friendship. So horse before cart. So when you go dating the next time, I'd like you to ask yourself, is this cart before horse or horse before cart? Do I have my healthy foundations in place? Am I in a good place? So I don't have time for you to all answer this question. It's something very important for you to consider. And there's a comment there from someone who's been through some of my group programs and who is now in a healthy relationship. And I would reiterate that this for me is so much more important than what apps to be on, what to say on a first date, like how to meet people. I think if you have this in place, everything changes. Everything changes. I do have a group where you can check on your dating path. I'll tell you about that in a minute if you can stay. So I want you to consider this question after the session next week. How emotionally available are you, or how afraid are you of love, connection, intimacy, commitment, etc.? I wanted to talk about boundaries, but I'm aware of the time, so I'm very quickly gonna. Hopefully, you know this image. This is my dance space. This is your dance space. Boundaries are where I begin and the other. And I begin and end, and where you begin and end, and there's a space in between, and I get to choose how you come into my space, when you come into my space, how close you come to me. I get to say no, I get to say enough. And I mentioned boundaries because it came up a lot in the questionnaire. Connect with your inner wisdom. Try and figure out what you want and what you need. Tap into your inner courage. Get support. Don't do it alone. Speak your truth and sit with what I call the afterburn, which is when we have that horrible feeling after speaking our truth that, oh, I shouldn't have spoken my truth. I take that back. I didn't mean no, I meant yes. And we want to reassure ourselves that it's safe to say no. It's safe to express your needs and wants. It's safe to be your authentic self. And it's safe to choose. So we choose. We don't wait to be chosen. We choose. And we choose if we have healthy self-esteem. Okay. And this is a really important point. So I'm clearly going to have to do another workshop, or you're going to have to come on one of my group programs. when you look for a relationship, are you seeking resolution? Are you seeking to get your unmet childhood needs met today? Are you seeking to recreate your childhood story and engineer a happier outcome? Are you seeking to protect yourself from getting hurt again? So if we're doing these things, we're not going to get a good outcome. This is why it's so important to resolve the childhood grief. Because we will keep, for example, I will find a man who is a complete commitment phobe, who might remind me of a parent, and I will fall for him in the hope that he will not be a complete commitment phobe. So I can rewrite the story of my childhood and turn this man who has sort of the essence of my parent, I can turn this man into an available man. So I rewrite my childhood story and I try and engineer a happier outcome. Now, this is something that's quite deep. If you haven't understood it, please come back to me, and because this is stuff I work through in my programs and with my clients. So I'm just going to have to move on just because of time, but so what we want to do is imperfectly, because we'll never be perfect and we don't need to wait until we're perfect. We want to resolve our early wounds as best as we can. We want to stop trying to get our unmet childhood needs met in our relationships today. We want to grieve and come to terms with our childhood journey so we can hold today's outcome loosely. Now, I know that's hard, but when we go dating, we want to hold it loosely. It might work out. It might not work out, but I'm not holding on and like trying to make it happen and hiding my authentic self and being a people pleaser and not speaking my truth because I desperately want it to happen. I'm holding it loosely. I want to soften and become more vulnerable with support. And someone says, is that why sometimes partners remind me of my father? Absolutely. We are kind of naturally drawn to people who remind us of our early caregivers because they feel familiar and therefore safe. And the key is, hopefully this is my next slide. Yep, that worked out well. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you need to run a mile from someone who reminds you of your father. But you do need to ask the question, does this person have a capacity for intimacy? Does this person have a capacity for intimacy? Now, that's a big expression, which I don't have time to explain in full, but it is, can they hear me? Can they see me? Can we negotiate boundaries? Are they open to discussing the deeper stuff? Are they open to a little bit of growth, a little bit of healing? Does this person have a capacity for intimacy? So sometimes we need to date scared. Often we need to date scared because we're not going to be able to resolve all our fears immediately. But I say date scared, but date supported. So I wouldn't let your fear stop you from dating. I would be aware of the vicious cycle. I would make sure that you have healthy foundations. And I would get loads of support. And that could be through me or through anyone else, through your friendship groups, a different coach, a different community. But I didn't do it alone, unsupported. People who've shared in the chat and my clients, those who've done my programs, didn't date alone and unsupported. I had I can't remember how many, a couple of marriages last year, engagements amongst my clients, people who are moving in together, and people who are transforming their lives, because it's not just about finding love. People who are changing their careers, transforming their lives, following their dreams, doing hobbies that they've always wanted to do, feeling enough, feeling better about themselves. because it's not just about finding love. So I need support. Sometimes I can't trust my own thinking. Sometimes I abandon myself. Sometimes I crave love or approval. Sometimes I get overwhelmed and need to share my feelings. Sometimes I feel scared and need support. So I want to talk about briefly how I can support you, and then we're going to have questions, and anyone who wants to stay, I appreciate everyone over, and I do apologize. Anyone who wants to stay will have some questions. Pop your questions in the chat, but I just want to tell you about how I can support you. There are 3 ways. This is where I'd like you to, well, this is where I'd like you to be, because I believe that if we invest in ourselves, we transform. I'd also like you to be here. So I have a community where you can belong, where you can get support from like-minded, emotionally intelligent women, such as the ones who have been in this workshop. It's a low-cost monthly investment. It's running from October. It's running from the end of September through October, November, and December, which means you'll be supported through Christmas. It is not an exclusive childless, not by choice community. It is a broader community, but it's full of empathetic women who are ready to support each other. I ran a similar community through August, and you can read the feedback, and I'll offer that to you. I have a group transformation program. I have 2 programs: How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations, Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence. Both of them are launching in early October. They include group calls like this with more participation. They include group coaching, group Q&A. Both of the Belong and the Transform include a Telegram group community, which is like WhatsApp, where you can ask those dating questions. I'm going on a date. I don't feel good enough. Help. I've met this guy. I've met this woman. There's a red flag. What do you think? You can share that, and you can get support immediately from others and from me. Or you could try, I've called it VIP because I can't think of another name, but I don't really like VIP. But you can try a bespoke program, which is one-to-one coaching, together with a group program and community or self-paced course, and tailored one-to-one support. And I'm just very briefly going to share, and I will send all this round to you by email. Sorry, I'm just going to share. I'm just going to share this. So hopefully you can see these are the courses that I offer. Starting in October, How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations. If you've already taken my Laying the Foundations course, or you already have healthy foundations, and we can chat about that, you can take the Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence course at the same time, simultaneously as this course. And I will send those details out. You can join the Love Collective, which is my membership community, which starts in the end of September, actually next week. And that's £30 a month for 3 months, or £75 for the 3 months. So that's just £25 a month. I have all these different courses. Some of them are self-paced. Some of them are recorded workshops. Some of them are recorded courses, emotional overeating. Let me just see what else I've got. How to find an emotionally available partner. This is the Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence course that you can join in October if you have healthy foundations already. That is a taster. Step inside, reconnect with your true self. These are self-paced versions of the group programs, which you can take on your own or combined with one-to-one coaching with me, or you can join the collective membership community and take a self-paced course if you would prefer that. So I have lots of different options at different price points, I suppose, because I know everyone has different needs and budgets and so forth. But I would really, as I say, it doesn't have to be with me. But for me, the key to healthy dating is to do this inner work and get support. And then the outer stuff takes care of itself, I think. And that's been my experience. So how to fall in love laying the foundations is the inner work. Date with courage, clarity, and confidence is the outer work. Dating, setting boundaries, apps, profiles, etc. And you can do all that on the other course as well. It just depends where you are. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And I'm nearly at your questions. So just give me one moment. I just want to finish this. So you can belong to the community, the Love Collective. You can go on a group transformation journey with me. And I am changing my model from January, and the prices will be going up in January. And I know everyone would say that, but it's actually true because I am on a journey of valuing myself and my work and my time and my energy. And these courses have changed people's lives. So I value them. So this is a quick wrap up. Date and relate with self-worth. Horse before cart, not cart before horse. Because if we put the cart before the horse and we go dating before we're ready, before we have healthy foundations, we will end up in the vicious cycle. And we want a virtual circle. We want to heal our early wounds imperfectly, because it's always going to be imperfect. We want to show up authentically, not as a people pleaser. We want to set and hold healthy boundaries, say no when we mean no. We want to choose, not wait to be chosen. We want the confidence and the courage to walk away or walk towards a relationship. So it takes confidence and courage to walk away. And I know some of you have questions about how do you say no when you're dating? How do you say, I don't want to be with you? We have confidence and courage to do that. We get support. We ask our community. If you're part of the Love Collective or the course, you ask people, I need to finish this. How do I do it? What do I say? You get support. But also you appreciate that we are two adults choosing to date. And what comes with dating is risk, potential hurt. But because we have our strong foundations, we're going to be okay. And because we're not a people pleaser, we can show up authentically. We have courage to express our needs and wants. That last point, you're going to have to read my book if you haven't already, or come on a course. We want to understand the ideal, ordeal, real deal, or no deal. I don't have time to explain that, I'm afraid. Talk with me. So I am going to send you a link tomorrow with, I might be able to put it in the chat while we're doing questions. I'll put a chat to my courses. I'll put a link to the courses in the chat while we're doing questions. But you can talk to me, you can book a free discovery call, and you can talk to me about which of my options you might like to consider. Okay, questions. I'm gonna wrap up. Sorry, that was quite packed. I tend to pack things in. I have a lot of information I'd like to share with you. I appreciate I haven't been able to answer all your points. This workshop might not have suited everyone. It's a free workshop. It's a broad audience. And thank you for your patience. And yeah, so please share your questions in the chat initially, or you can raise your hand to ask a question out loud, knowing that you will be recorded for now because I haven't switched the recording off, or you can wait until I switch the recording off. Right, stop share. I know there's some questions there that I'm going to have a look at. And I am just going to share those links. Gosh, that was exhausting, wasn't it? No, let me just share. Sorry, let me just share the links that I wanted to share. And then I'll look at your questions. So that's the, I'll send all this around to you. And then I want to share the link to my discovery call. I'm going to be adding more availability. So if you can't find availability, please bear with. And yeah, I'll share that. And you can ask me about, oops. You can ask me, if you want to book a discovery call, please do. You can ask about, yeah, you can ask about the courses or the community, etc. So I'm just going through the chat now. Pop out. That's what I want to do. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. Okay, let me just okay, I'm just going to see if I can see if there are any. How big is the group? Do you mean the collective or the collective is as currently when we ran it in August, it was about 24. The group program tends to be a smaller number, perhaps around 8 to 10, but I am yeah, I'm changing the model next year, but for now it's quite a small number. Thank you for your lovely comments. Somebody shares about the friendship apocalypse of being over 40 and childless and single is challenging. I would, yeah, I agree with that. And I would say, try and find your tribe, your community. And, you know, here we have, well, I had 140 women sign up to my workshop, and that is with my marketing not being brilliant. So there are lots of women out there. So try and find your community. Gateway Women, if you don't know that, is a community of women who are childless, not by choice. Does the membership include the courses? No. The membership is a high value, low investment option. So membership is just £30 a month. If you'd like to add a course on, you can either pay for the self-paced course or you can come on the group course, but the group program does include the membership. Thank you for the lovely comments. The How to Fall in Love Laying the Foundations course is $695. That's a 3-month journey. It includes the membership community as well, and lots of Zoom calls and your own little community. All the details will be sent out to you as well. Okay. Okay, so someone who has a question. Yeah, so someone's done my emotional availability course. I've met a guy who's really lovely and not my usual type. Ha ha ha. Good. That's good. I mentioned someone living far away, and this person is far, but he had a date when he was here recently, and then mentioned another one when he's nearby again. Well, first of all, is he being true? Is he being true? Like, do you feel like he's being honest with you? That's important. I wouldn't say that distance is necessarily a bad thing. I got together with my husband when I lived in Poole. I lived in London and he lived in Poole in Dorset, a couple of 100 miles. I wanted to move to the seaside. I was considering moving to the coast, and But I suppose this is about the self-awareness, and this is about knowing your truth, and this is about being aware of red flags. I would want to know that he was being honest with me, that he was being straight with me. That's important. And I would also want to check my own availability. How emotionally available am I? I don't know if there are any gateway women groups in Holland. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? If there are none that you want to put in the chat, I'm going to switch the recording off. I might have missed some. Okay. Does the inner transformation work involve more introspective self-worth? I'm not sure if I quite understand your question. The do you mean my courses or okay, I think I understand your question. So the inner transformation work we need to do will vary for everyone. I highly recommend my courses, of course. They are deep. They are built on everything I have learned studying counseling and psychotherapy and being in counseling and psychotherapy. I think group work is also really helpful. The inner work you can do with a therapist. You can do it with me. You can do it as part of a group. I would say it's important to be, I think it's important to be part of a group when we are actually dating. The inner work you can do more sort of on your own, one-to-one, with a course. Yeah, the difference between the foundations and dating with clarity, etc. There is I'll make sure there's a list of what's covered on each, but if you think about the foundations is the inner work, and it's 5 modules. Connection to self. Do I feel my feelings? Am I connected to myself? Am I connected to my intuition? How do I connect to my intuition? Self-esteem, self-confidence, emotional resilience, building up my inner oak tree so that I stand tall, understanding my dating and relationship patterns, understanding my dating and relationship fears, changing my patterns, facing my fears, letting go of lost loves, letting go of core beliefs, letting go of unhealthy patterns. That is the foundations. And I think someone here has done the foundations, and you're welcome to share and also ask. Yeah, if you want to speak, if you're interested in one of the courses and you want to speak to someone who's done one of the courses, please say, and I can put you in touch. Just email me. And then date with courage, clarity, and confidence is like, basically we build the foundations and then we take the show on the road. So we have our healthy foundations and then we take the show on the road, and we so that's about healthy boundaries, like really practical things for dating, boundaries with ourselves, boundaries with others. It is about throwing away the list, so being open to different types, having a clear vision of who you're looking for, but not being restricted by a checklist. It's about making time and space for love. It's about creating a life that you truly love, so that a relationship is an extension of that rather than something we're craving. And it is about understanding your trigger points. And I've done that in the wrong order, but they're the points. So what pushes your buttons when you're dating? So if you're interested, we can have a chat about the different options. If I'm not attracted to him, should I still give him a chance? Depends how many times you've seen him. How many times have you seen this person? And or is it my fear or is it my instinct? So when I first met my husband, I had all these judgments against him. Like, he's got long hair, he's got, like, he could do with losing a bit of weight. I don't like the fact that he's got a job that isn't hugely high achieving. So there were things that I didn't find attractive, but I did feel a physical attraction, which I was trying to resist because he didn't tick all my boxes. In the end, I didn't manage to resist it completely, and I let go of my boxes. Yeah, it would sort of depend how many times you've seen him. Have I got any retreats planned? I didn't mention my retreats, but I'm trying to plan one for early next year. So I'll be in touch about that. Yes. So, oh, Alice, thank you for sharing about the course. How much, if any, do you go into the childlessness part or link that up with your work? I have considered, depending on the interest in the course, actually, I forgot to say this, but the laying the foundations, I am considering that being an exclusively childless, not by choice group of women. As it happens, most of the women who come and work with me are childless, not by choice, not necessarily definitively, but they identify as that because they have not yet had children. Some of them might be definitively. So, yeah, so get in touch with me because that is what I'm considering for. And then therefore we would talk more about that. Just going back to the person who has not attracted to the person, you have seen this person a lot by FaceTime. I would say absolutely worth meeting face to face. I remember doing a video call with my now husband. Video call, no chance. Would have gone nowhere based on video call. He wasn't charismatic on the computer. So yeah, type of therapy did I have? I have done trauma therapy with a therapist who is an expert in complex PTSD and childhood trauma. And I have done group work around adult child stuff, alcoholism in the family and work and that work. So I have done lots of different work. Thank you for sharing about the course. Are the retreats abroad? They will be. My next retreat will be in the UK, but hopefully later in 2024, I will do a retreat abroad. I have done 2 in Turkey and 1 in Spain in the past. Okay, thank you for your interest. Please make sure when I send out the email, you just drop me a note. I am not a psychotherapist. I have a diploma in counseling and psychotherapy. I chose to train in coaching because for many reasons, but it felt for me more dynamic and I could share my personal story and experience, which isn't usually recommended for therapists. So I do a lot of my work sharing my journey and my vulnerability, as you have heard. So yeah, that is the work that I do. Thank you. There's someone who's willing to speak. If anyone wants to talk about the courses. Okay, someone says they've done so many therapies and still didn't work. I could easily say try my course, couldn't I? But you know, they didn't work yet. They didn't work yet. Maybe the journey is still continuing. You know, when I was 45, well, yeah. Well, before I committed to my husband, I'd done 10 years of therapy. I think I'd done 10 years of on and off of therapy and supportive groups, and they hadn't worked yet. They hadn't worked yet. So I would say there is a key that unlocks things, or many keys, many keys. And I think my work is one of those keys. There are many keys. I think my work is one of those keys for some people. So, and I say that unashamedly. not because I want to blow my own trumpet, but because I believe it. And I'm not saying you wouldn't find the same content with a wonderful trauma therapist. You wouldn't get the community alongside, probably. Anyway, yeah, and I'm gonna thank you. Yeah, and just on the investment, I did this. I had this on a previous workshop that I did as a slide, but I haven't got it on this one. But investment. If you think about the cost of the years, the cost of the pain, the cost of the dates, of dating with poor foundations, dating with unhealthy patterns. When I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I was so frustrated with this that I absolutely decided that I would go for it and change this. And I invested and have continued to invest about £200 a month in myself, if not more, actually, probably £250 a month in my journey, ongoing for years. And I do not earn a high salary. I would say most of you earn more than me. My business is, I'm self-employed. This is a small business. I am still growing it. I would say most of you earn more than me. And I invest £250 a month in my healing, in my growth, in my journey. And with that investment, I have transformed my life, stopped my binge eating, stopped my binge drinking, changed my relationship patterns, moved out of London, moved to the coast, written a book, built a coaching business, changed my career, bought a house with my husband, got married, got a dog. So it has been worth it for me, and I would not do it any other way. So think about what you're investing. Think about where you're investing it. And I offer the Love Collective membership community at low cost, because I know not everyone is ready to jump, and some of you have only just met me, and some of you need time. So I offer that as a starting point, as a place for you to come and share and be part of a community. But I didn't get where I got on £30 a month. I got where I got on 250, if not more, because retreats and everything else that I've done. So yeah, so think about that. So I'm going to switch the recording off, and I'm sure you all want to go, but I will just give us 5 minutes if anyone wants to just unmute and say hello and goodbye, those who are leaving. Thank you for recommending my courses. Will I be doing the community from January? Possibly. I'm trying this model to see how it suits me and others. So possibility, yes. So thank you so much. I'm going to switch the recording off. Thank you if you're watching on recording. Well done for getting to the end. Stop recording.